The night sky above the alien moon was quiet. Too quiet for a place that once echoed with the hum of mining ships and cargo haulers. Now only cold winds moved across the barren land, carrying dust like whispers. Commander Elias Ward, a human explorer, walked carefully across the cracked surface. His boots left faint marks on the gray soil. His scanner beeped softly, searching for minerals. But the readings were strange. Weak signals flickered in and out, as if something or someone was trying to call for help. He frowned. The moon was abandoned for years. No settlements, no working outposts. At least that was what the chart said. But then the signal pulsed again, stronger, like a heartbeat in the dark. Elias felt his chest tighten. Instinct told him to leave. Logic told him it was probably just an old machine. But something deeper whispered that he needed to follow. He moved over a ridge. The ground dipped into a crater there. Broken metal shined under the pale light of a distant star. A wreck, small and half buried in dust. The ship looked strange. Curved edges, glowing lines across its hull. Not human, not any design he recognized. As Elias stepped closer, he heard a sound, a soft, weak cry. It was not the wind, it was alive. His hand went to his sidearm, but he did not draw it. He listened again. The cry trembled, thin and desperate. With slow steps, he climbed down into the crater. The wreckage hissed with dying sparks. Its door was bent, half open. He pushed against it. Metal groaned but gave way. Inside was dark and smelled of burned circuits. He raised his lamp, and the beam cut through smoke and shadows. Then he saw her. A small alien child lay against the wall. Her skin was pale blue, glowing faintly with dim patterns that flickered like dying stars. She was bleeding from her side, her eyes large. Bright silver. Fluttered half open, she tried to move but could not. Elias froze. He had seen aliens before. Traders and travelers, but this was different. This was a child wounded and scared. She looked at him, lips parting as if to speak. But no words came, only a pained whimper. For a moment, Elias felt the weight of choice. If he walked away, no one would know. But his gut twisted. He could not leave her. Not here in the silence of a dead moon. He crouched down and spoke softly. "Easy now, you're safe. I'm not here to hurt you, of course." She probably did not understand his words, but tone mattered. And maybe kindness was a language anyone could hear. He pulled his pack forward and opened his medkit. He sprayed sealant foam over her wound. The child flinched, then stilled, breathing a little easier. Elias carefully lifted her. She was light. Too light for someone her size. He could feel her bones, fragile as glass, beneath his gloves. As he carried her out of the wreck, his comms hissed with static. Something large had just entered orbit. His suit sensors picked up a faint energy signature above the moon, powerful and sharp. He glanced up at the sky, but saw nothing yet. "Who are you?" he muttered, looking at the child in his arms. "And who's coming after you?" The girl's fingers gripped weakly at his sleeve. Her eyes, though fading, held fear. Not of him, but of something else. Something far greater. Elias quickened his pace back to his ship, each step heavy with more than weight. He felt eyes in the sky, unseen but watching. A presence that made his skin crawl by the time he reached his airlock. The child was slipping into unconsciousness. He laid her on the cot inside, heart racing. Her breathing was shallow but steady now. The med scanner beeped with urgent warnings. He silenced it, frustration burning in his chest. He could only do so much with human tech. Her biology was different, fragile, alien. Still, he had given her a chance, and that meant something. Elias stood near the viewport, staring at the stars. The scanner showed a blip in orbit. Something massive was out there. It was not moving closer, not yet. But he could feel it waiting, watching. He did not know that far above. A mother's eyes burned with fury and fear. She had locked onto her daughter's life signs, and nothing in the galaxy would stop her from getting her child back. But for now, inside the small human ship, silence filled the air, broken only by the soft, weak breaths of an alien child who had just found the most unlikely protector. And somewhere in his chest, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The hum of the ship's engines filled the small cabin. Steady but lonely. Commander Elias Ward sat beside the cot where the alien child rested. Her breathing was still uneven, her silver eyes flickering open only for seconds at a time before shutting again. She looked fragile, like a candle burning low in the dark. Elias placed a hand on his helmet. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, he had been alone for months, drifting between forgotten moons and abandoned colonies. He was used to silence, but now silence felt heavier. because it was broken by the weak sound of a child fighting to stay alive. He had given her pain suppressors, sealed her wounds as best as his kit allowed. Still, she needed more. Her body was not human. Her glowing patterns flickered like broken lights. He didn't know if that was normal or if it meant she was close to dying. Elias leaned forward, speaking softly. "You're going to be all right. I promise." He knew promises were dangerous, but he could not stop himself. The child stirred, her small fingers twitched, then reached out, trembling, and caught the edge of his sleeve. The touch froze him. It was not strength, it was trust. She did not know his language, his world, his face, but she reached for him, and Elias, a man hardened by years of lonely travel, felt something shift in his chest. He gently held her hand, careful not to press too hard. Her skin was warm but strange, almost humming with energy beneath. She blinked at him, her lips moving. A sound came out, broken, weak, but words nonetheless Elias couldn't understand. But the tone was clear, fear mixed with hope. He squeezed her hand gently. "Safe," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "Safe." He repeated it, hoping she would hear the meaning in the tone, if not the word. The child whispered something again. Then her glowing eyes softened. She didn't let go of his sleeve. Not even when she drifted into sleep, Elias sat back, staring at the ceiling of the small ship. Something in him wanted to believe this child was more than just an accident he stumbled on. Something told him that fate had pulled him into something much larger. Hours passed, and while the child slept, Elias tried to understand what had happened. He checked the wreck logs he had pulled from the crashed ship. The symbols were alien, a script that looked like flowing rivers across stone. He couldn't translate it, but he could see fragments, coordinates, distress signals, and encrypted warnings. It was not a simple crash. This ship had been shot down. Elias's jaw tightened. Someone wanted this child dead, or someone wanted to take her away and failed. Either way, she had enemies, and now, by saving her, those enemies would become his. He looked back at the girl. Her tiny frame curled beneath a blanket. She shivered, so he adjusted the heat in the cabin, watching the glow patterns on her skin brighten slightly. Her breathing steadied, and then, in that quiet moment, a thought slipped into his mind. What if she had a family, a mother, somewhere out there? He imagined a mother's panic, the rage of losing a child. If the roles were reversed, if it was his family, he would burn the stars to ash to get them back. A low alarm broke his thoughts. The ship's scanners pulsed red for a moment. Something big was still lurking in orbit. It hadn't attacked yet, but it hadn't left either. It was waiting, tracking, Elias muttered under his breath. "So you're not just a survivor, are you? You're someone important," as if answering him. The child stirred again. This time she opened her eyes fully. Silver light gleamed in them. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. Elias quickly helped her rest against the cot's frame. She pointed weakly at herself, whispering a single word, her name. He couldn't catch it fully. It sounded like Lyra or Lyra. He repeated softly, "Lyra." The child blinked, then nodded faintly. Relief crossed her face for the first time. She did not look only scared, she looked seen. Elias smiled, small but real. "All right, Lyra, we'll figure this out." Her glowing markings flickered brighter. As if her body understood trust even before her mind could, she leaned against him, her small frame trembling but steadying with his presence. And Elias knew deep inside that he was no longer just an explorer passing through forgotten places. He was now the guardian of a life, one that carried meaning he did not yet understand. Above, hidden in the cold void, a warship's sensors locked more firmly onto his trail. In its command seat, a mother's hands clenched tight around the armrest. Her heart screamed for her daughter, her fury sharper than blades. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, my child. I'm coming." But down in the quiet human ship, Elias did not hear her vow. All he knew was that the fragile bond between him and the wounded alien child had begun, a bond that would soon be tested across stars. The human ship drifted in the shadow of the barren moon, engines on low power. Commander Elias Ward sat at the cockpit, his eyes fixed on the scanner display. A single red blip pulsed at the edge of the screen, steady, unmoving. It had been there for hours. It was no asteroid, no derelict satellite. Elias knew what it was, a ship, and not just any ship. Its energy signature was sharp. Too strong for cargo haulers, too focused for survey craft. Whoever sat in orbit was watching, waiting behind him. In the medical cot, Lyra stirred. Her small voice whispered in her alien tongue, fevered dreams pulling her deeper into fear. The glowing patterns on her skin flashed like lightning across water. Elias rose quickly, kneeling at her side. He whispered softly, "Easy. You're safe." Though his own heart told him otherwise, the girl's silver eyes snapped open. Wide with terror, she said something fast, the words stumbling over each other. She pointed upward, toward the ceiling, then curled against him, shaking. Elias didn't understand her language, but he didn't need translation. She knew something. She knew who was above them. Elias swallowed hard. "Someone's hunting you, aren't they?" The child's trembling fingers gripped his sleeve. She nodded faintly, her eyes filled with tears. Elias stood. Pacing across the small cabin, his ship was sturdy, but no match for a war vessel. If that ship above decided to strike, they wouldn't last 5 seconds. Still, he couldn't hand her over. Not when she had clung to him with such trust. Not when she had spoken her name to him. He returned to the controls. He had 2 choices: wait and hope the hunter lost patience, or run and risk being chased across the stars. Neither was good, both could end in death. The console beeped. A message request, scrambled. Not human frequency. Elias hesitated, then pressed receive. The speakers hissed, and a voice filled the cabin. It was sharp, strong, laced with rage. But beneath it was something rawer, fear. The alien tongue spilled out in fierce rhythm. And though Elias couldn't understand the words, he caught the tone. The voice was not asking. It was demanding. Lyra whimpered, pressing her hands to her ears. Elias moved quickly to mute the channel. He knelt beside her again. "It's all right," he whispered. "I won't let them take you." But his stomach twisted. He wasn't stupid. He knew this wasn't just an enemy soldier or bounty hunter. This voice, it sounded like blood ties, a parent, a protector, someone who had lost a child. Still, the way the voice burned through the comms made his hands tremble. If this was her mother, she wasn't coming to ask politely. She was coming like a storm. Elias strapped himself into the pilot's chair. His mind raced. He couldn't fight her ship. But maybe he could hide. He plotted a course toward a nearby nebula, thick with ion clouds and unstable lightning, the kind of place even advanced scanners struggled to pierce. "Hold on, kid," he said under his breath. "We're not dying here." Engines roared to life. The ship lifted from the moon's surface, dust scattering in plumes. Lyra clung to the side rails of her cot. Her glowing eyes locked on him. For the first time, she didn't look only scared. There was something else. Trust. As the ship rose into the void, Elias glanced at the scanner. The red blip moved. The hunter was following. Alarms blared. Target locks flashed across the screen. A warning shot cut past his hull, rocking the ship hard. Elias cursed. Fingers flying over the controls, he dove into the black, weaving between fragments of ancient debris orbiting the dead moon. The alien ship stayed behind but close. It was testing him, toying with him, not striking full, not yet. Elias realized with a cold shiver, they wanted him alive. They wanted the child back in one piece. He slammed the thrusters. Breaking orbit and heading for the nebula, the stars stretched around him as hyperspace opened. But even there, in the heart of light and motion, he felt the shadow chasing him. Hours later, as the ship slowed near the storming edge of the nebula, Elias finally breathed. His hands ached from gripping the controls. His eyes burned from staring too long at flashing warnings. Lyra was curled up asleep, exhaustion claiming her small body. Elias looked at her, then out into the storm clouds of glowing blue gas ahead. "Your mother's out there, isn't she?" he whispered. "And she's not going to stop." The thought weighed on him. He had stolen nothing, yet here he was, a fugitive, carrying a child who had chosen him, and somewhere beyond the nebula, her protector burned with rage. The hunt had only just begun. The nebula spread before them like a living ocean in the stars. Clouds of blue and violet swirled. Lightning arced inside the fog, and strange shadows moved as if creatures lived in the gas itself. To most pilots, this was a death trap, a place to avoid. But for Elias, it was the only chance to escape. He guided his small ship forward, sensors flickering with static. The nebula swallowed them whole. Soundless lightning danced across the viewports, lighting Lyra's sleeping face with ghostly glow. Her skin markings responded, glowing faintly brighter. Elias noticed but did not understand. "Storms inside storms," he muttered, holding the controls firm. "Let's hope you can hide us." The engines groaned as ion bursts battered the hull. Shields dropped lower and lower. Elias fought the stick, sweat dripping down his temple. He had flown through asteroid belts, dodged pirates, but this was like flying blind into a storm that hated intruders. Behind him, Lyra stirred awake. The child sat up weakly, her eyes widening at the glowing walls outside. She whispered something soft. Her voice trembling, Elias looked back at her. She was pointing, not in fear this time, but in awe. "You've seen this before?" he asked, though he knew she couldn't understand. Still, her reaction gave him pause. Maybe her people had crossed here many times. Maybe the nebula wasn't only danger to them. Maybe it was home. She pressed her hand against the viewport, her glowing skin matching the lightning flashes. For a moment, Elias thought the nebula responded. The cloud seemed to shift, opening paths where there had been none. He blinked, shaking his head. "No, that's just my eyes playing tricks." But the thought stayed. The scanners beeped again. Faint echoes. Not one ship, but two, no. 3. The hunter wasn't alone anymore. Elias cursed under his breath. They were being boxed in. He pushed the engines harder. The ship jolted violently. Sparks rained from a side console. But they moved deeper into the fog. Shields dipped dangerously low. Alarms screamed. Lyra cried out, clutching the cot. Elias turned back to her. "Stay down, hold on!" His voice cut through the shaking cabin. Her silver eyes met his, filled with both terror and something else. "Resolve." She whispered her name again, then pointed sharply at the controls. Her other hand pressed against her glowing markings. They pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias frowned. You know what to do?" The girl nodded weakly. Her small frame trembling, she gestured again. This time toward the navigation system. Elias hesitated. He had no reason to trust alien directions. But then again, he had no choice. "All right, kid," he muttered. "Show me." He adjusted the course as she guided with trembling hands. Each time he turned where she pointed, the nebula shifted. Openings appeared. Storms parted just enough. It was impossible, but it worked. The scanners cleared for seconds, showing safe tunnels where death should have been. Lightning struck outside, blinding, but the ship survived. Elias gritted his teeth. "Who are you, Lyra?" "What are you really?" She only leaned forward, her hand pressed to the glass, her glow merging with the nebula's light. It was as if the storm itself recognized her. Hours stretched, the nebula battered them, but somehow never destroyed them. And all the while, Elias felt the hunters behind, distant, struggling. Their signals wavered. Caught in traps the nebula had not spared for them. Finally, after endless shaking, the storm clouds began to thin. Beyond lay clear space. Stars shining cold and endless. Elias collapsed back into his chair, his arms trembling from holding the controls. Sweat clung to his face, but a laugh slipped from his lips. Half relief, half disbelief. "We made it," he whispered, staring at the girl. "We actually made it." Lyra's glowing eyes softened. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Her hand slipped from the viewport, falling against her lap. Exhaustion overcame her, but for once, she slept without fear. Elias sat in silence. Staring at her small form, he realized something then. She wasn't just surviving. She was guiding. She had saved them as much as he had. Maybe more, but before relief could sink in, the scanners beeped once more, faint but clear. The hunter's ship had survived too. Battered but relentless, and now it was moving again. Still on their trail, Elias's heart sank. His voice turned hard. "So you won't quit, will you? No matter where we go." Far behind, hidden inside the storm, a massive ship burned with fury. Inside, a mother's eyes glowed with the same silver light as her child's. Her voice broke the silence of her bridge. "Run as far as you want, human. Nothing will keep me from her." And though Elias could not hear her vow, he felt it in the pull of the stars. The hunt was not over. It had only grown more dangerous. The nebula was behind them now, but peace did not follow. Elias's ship drifted in quiet space. Its hull scorched, its shields cracked for a moment. The stars seemed calm, but the silence carried weight. A waiting silence, the scanners pulsed. A new signal cut across the void. Clear, sharp, stronger than before. Elias's chest tightened. He didn't need the computer to tell him. He knew the hunter had returned. The comms crackled. This time the voice came through clearly. It was not a mechanical broadcast, it was personal. A woman's voice. Sharp as steel, yet trembling with fire. The alien words flowed fast and heavy. Elias couldn't understand them. But the tone pierced him. This wasn't just anger. It was desperation behind him. Lyra sat up on the cot, her silver eyes widened. She whispered something that carried weight even Elias understood. A single word. Mother. Elias froze. His gut twisted. He had expected an enemy. Maybe bounty hunters, maybe soldiers, but this was her mother. The voice spoke again. Demanding, commanding. It carried the authority of someone who was used to being obeyed. Elias muted the channel. He couldn't bear the sound. Not when Lyra's eyes filled with tears. The child shook her head, pressing her hands over her ears. She said something in her language, her voice trembling. She was afraid, but not of Elias, not of the warship outside. Her fear was deeper. Older Elias knelt beside her. She's your mother, isn't she? Lyra nodded, slow and pained. Then she clutched at his sleeve. Whispering fast, pleading, her glowing markings flared. Not with health, but with panic. Elias didn't understand her words. But her meaning was clear enough. She didn't want to go back. The cockpit lights dimmed as the larger ship locked onto them. Red warnings flashed across the screen. Missile locks, energy beams ready to fire. Elias's hands tightened on the controls. He could not fight a warship. He could barely keep his own ship running. But surrendering meant handing Lyra back to someone she clearly feared. And Elias, hardened by years of loneliness, knew one truth. He would not betray the trust of a child who clung to him as her last hope. The comms crackled again. The mother's voice softened. It was not just rage anymore, it was pain. Elias glanced at Lyra. The girl shook her head violently. Tears running down her cheeks. Why are you afraid of her? Elias whispered, but the girl only buried her face against his arm. Refusing to look, a light blinked on the console. A direct channel request, if Elias accepted. They would see each other face to face. He hesitated, then pressed the switch. The screen lit up, and there she was. The alien woman was tall, armored, her silver eyes burning like fire. The glowing markings across her skin pulsed with intensity. Her face was carved with rage and fear. She looked less like a mother and more like a warrior goddess. Her voice thundered, words alien yet filled with emotion. She pointed at Elias, then at Lyra. The meaning was clear. Give her back. Now Elias stood his ground. She's hurt, he said firmly, knowing the woman didn't understand his words. She's afraid, he pointed at the child. Then shook his head, his tone carried refusal. The woman's eyes narrowed. Her jaw clenched, her voice rose. Not pleading now, but threatening, Lyra whimpered, hiding behind Elias. Her hands clutching his jacket like claws. The standoff stretched. Neither moved. The silence between their words screamed louder than any threat. Finally, Elias spoke again, slow, careful. If you want her back, prove you deserve her. He didn't know if the woman caught the meaning, but his tone was clear. He would not hand the girl over simply because of blood. The mother's silver eyes softened for just a second. A flicker of pain crossed her fierce mask. She saw her daughter's terror, saw how tightly Lyra clung to the human, and for a heartbeat she faltered. Then her armor of fury returned. She cut the channel, her warship shifted, weapons humming with energy. Elias felt his heart slam in his chest. So this is it, he muttered, hands tightening on the controls. Clash of wills behind him. Lyra whispered weakly, her voice cracked. But the word was clear enough. Stay, she begged him not to let go. Elias nodded once, hard. I'm here. The stars lit up as the alien warship powered weapons, and the fragile human ship braced for fire. A mother's rage and a stranger's promise had collided, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The void between the two ships was sharp with tension. Elias's small vessel floated like a fragile bird before the great beast of the alien warship. Both hung in silence for long minutes, weapons humming, shields straining. The galaxy felt still, as if the stars themselves waited to see who would break first. Then the warship's engines flared. It did not fire, instead it moved ahead slowly, herding Elias's ship toward a dead world that orbited nearby. The planet was hollowed out, covered with ruins, and at its pole, a broken station still drifted, dark and lifeless. Elias understood. This was no chance. The mother wanted him to land there. Away from open space, away from escape, a place where words or battle could finish what had begun. He looked back at Lyra. The child's silver eyes shone wet with tears. She shook her head, clutching the side rails of the cot. Elias crouched near her, his voice low. I know, but if we run, she'll destroy us. If we stay, maybe we can make her listen. Lyra's hands trembled. She pressed her small palm against his chest. As if to hold him back, her markings flickered dimly. He covered her hand gently. "I won't abandon you." Moments later, the human ship settled inside the ruined docking bay of the old station. Dust rose, lights flickered as if the place remembered the footsteps of life after so many silent years. The airlock hissed and Elias stepped forward in his old explorer's suit. Lyra clung to his side, weak but refusing to let go. Together they walked into the hollow halls of the station. Their footsteps echoed, lonely but strong, across the bay. Another airlock opened. The mother stepped through. She was taller than Elias. Wrapped in silver armor etched with scars of war, her silver eyes glowed like blades. Her voice echoed across the ruined chamber. Sharp and furious, alien words poured out. Demanding, commanding. Her body moved with the fury of a storm, but her eyes burned with something deeper. Lyra cried out, her small voice breaking the silence. She spoke her mother's tongue. Words tumbling in fear Elias could not understand, but the meaning struck like fire. The child stood in front of him, her tiny form shielding him from the towering woman. The mother stopped mid-step, her eyes widened. The girl was choosing. Not to hide behind her mother's armor, but behind a human stranger. Elias raised his hand slowly. No weapon in sight, his voice was calm, steady. "She's afraid, can't you see? Look at her." Of course, the woman did not understand his words, but tone was its own language. His voice carried no fear, only defiance and compassion. The woman's jaw clenched, her markings pulsed. Light flaring with each beat of her heart, she stepped closer, towering over them. Elias did not move. Lyra held his sleeve tighter, her small frame shaking but unyielding in that moment. It was not weapons or ships that clashed, it was two wills. One born of blood, one forged in trust. The mother spoke again, softer now. Her voice cracked. Silver eyes flicked to her daughter, and for the first time Elias saw pain, real pain. A wound deeper than war. She was not only angry, she was afraid of losing what she loved most, but Lyra shook her head. She pointed to Elias, her weak voice rose. Alien words spilling fast. Urgent, she was begging not to be torn away. She was demanding to be seen, not as property. Not as a soldier's daughter, but as herself. The chamber shook as old machinery groaned. Lightning from the planet's storm flashed through broken windows. Shadows danced across steel walls. Elias stood steady, his heart pounding. He felt the moment, everything balanced here. In the space between them, he stepped forward. Placing himself between mother and child, his voice thundered through simple. "If you want her, prove to her you're worthy." "Not to me," he pointed down at Lyra. "To her." The alien woman froze. The words themselves were unknown to her, but his meaning was plain in every motion. Every tone, the child's decision mattered, and nothing could erase that truth. Silence stretched long and heavy. The mother looked at her daughter, then at the human. Her markings dimmed slightly. The fierce mask of a warrior cracked, revealing the raw wound of a parent who had fought too hard to protect, and perhaps hurt in the process. Lyra stepped forward, shaking but firm. She looked at both of them, her silver eyes filled with tears. Then she lifted her glowing hands, placing one on Elias's arm and one toward her mother. The message was clear even without words. She would not choose between them. She wanted both. The ruined station echoed with silence. The stars beyond watched. A human and an alien mother stood face to face, and between them, a child had drawn a line no weapon could break. The broken station was silent, save for the faint groan of old metal. Dust drifted in the thin air, lightning from the planet's surface flashing through shattered windows. It lit three figures frozen in a triangle. The human, the alien mother, and the child caught between them. Elias's breath was heavy inside his helmet. His eyes did not leave the towering woman before him. She was taller, stronger, armed with technology far beyond his own. Yet at this moment she looked less like a warrior and more like a mother torn apart. Lyra's glowing hand still touched them both. Her small body trembled, but her silver eyes burned with resolve. She whispered words in her tongue, repeating them again and again, pleading, demanding. The mother's jaw clenched. Her armor hummed with energy. Her markings flickered as if torn between rage and sorrow. She raised a hand. For a moment Elias thought she would strike, but instead she pressed her palm against her chest. Her voice broke, no longer thunder but cracked like glass. Elias did not understand the words, but he understood the sound. It was a mother's cry. Lyra stepped closer to her. The girl's hand reached toward the woman's arm. Her small fingers pressed against cold armor. The glow of her markings spread where she touched for the first time. The mother flinched not in anger but in guilt. Elias lowered his hand slowly, his voice steady though soft. She's alive because I protected her. She's safe because she trusted me. He knew she could not understand his words, but the truth was plain in his tone. He gestured to the girl. Don't take that from her. The mother's eyes shifted to him. Hard, searching as though she could see his very soul. Then her gaze dropped to Lyra. The fierce warrior bent down on one knee, armor creaking for the first time. Her voice softened. She spoke to her daughter. Words filled with sorrow and longing. Lyra answered weakly, her small voice breaking into sobs. She clutched her mother's arm, then turned and gripped Elias's hand as well. The message was clear. She would not let go of either. Something inside the woman changed. The rage faded from her stance. Her shoulders sagged under invisible weight. She touched Lyra's cheek gently, her fingers trembling. Then she looked at Elias again. Her silver eyes no longer burned like fire. They glimmered with something heavier, acceptance. The air between them shifted. The war was over, not with victory, not with defeat, but with surrender to something stronger than pride. Elias exhaled, the tension leaving him like a wave. He felt his knees almost buckle from the release. He had stood against warships and wrath, but this moment of raw humanity, was the hardest battle of all. The mother spoke again, slower now, her tone no longer a command but almost a question. She pointed at the child, then at Elias, her brows furrowed, as if struggling to put sense to the bond between them. Elias understood. He placed his hand on his chest, then gestured gently toward Lyra, his voice firm. Family, he pointed between them. Family, he repeated it, letting the word carry the meaning even if the language was strange. The woman blinked. Then slowly she nodded. Lyra's tears turned to a fragile smile. Her glow steadied, her breathing eased. For the first time since Elias had found her in the wreck, she looked at peace. Outside, the alien warship still floated, its weapons silent, its crew no doubt watching with confusion, waiting for orders that would never come. Inside the station, history had shifted quietly. The mother stood tall again, not in fury but in dignity. She pressed her armored fist lightly against her chest. A gesture Elias guessed was respect. Then she turned toward her daughter. Speaking softly, the child nodded, then squeezed Elias's hand. Refusing to let go, Elias smiled faintly. Looks like I'm stuck with you both, huh? The mother tilted her head, not understanding, but her eyes softened, and for the first time Elias thought he saw something like gratitude shining there. They walked together back to the docking bay, human and alien, mother and stranger. Bound by the fragile bridge of a child's choice, the path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers and questions. But one thing was clear. Lyra would not face it alone. As the airlock sealed and the ships prepared to leave, Elias stood by the viewport watching stars stretch beyond. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, a weight he had carried for years lifting. He had been alone for so long, wandering empty worlds. But now in the quiet of space he was no longer just one man. Behind him, Lyra whispered softly. Her small hand slipped into his, silver eyes gleamed with trust. Her glow shone steady like a beacon in the dark. And though the galaxy still waited with trials ahead, Elias knew the truth. Family was not only blood, family was the choice to protect, to stay, to believe. Somewhere deep inside, even the stars seemed to sigh, as if they too had witnessed the birth of something rare, a new kind of family, forged not by war but by trust across worlds.